You are invited to sharpen your command and leadership skills at the 2024 Blue Card Hazard Zone Conference. It's coming to the Sharonville Convention Center just outside Cincinnati, Ohio, September 30th through October 4th. It is 5 full days of command education and training at this year's Hazard Zone Conference. We have 21 instructors, networking opportunities, and this is a place to become a better incident commander. Register now at hazardzonebc.com. We'll see you there. Welcome, everyone, to the B Shifter podcast. You have John Vance here today, along with Josh Blum. And today's date is September 9th, 2024. How are you doing, Josh?
I'm doing great. Just getting ramped up for the conference right around the corner now, 21 days away or whatever. So we're all ready.
October 3rd and 4th in Sharonville. Still opportunity for people to get registered. We have hazardzonebc.com. Go there, get signed up. I know we are very excited, not only for all the classes that we have, but this is our annual get-together. It's nice to be able to see all the Blue Card users out there, find out what they're doing, catch up with how they are doing. Departments are always in a state of, as you say, fixing themselves and evolution. So it's always a great opportunity to check in with everybody. So we are really looking forward to that. It's going to be a really great learning event right outside Cincinnati, Ohio, in Sharonville. Any conference news that you have for us? I know people are kind of in and out of some of the workshops. Do we have any workshop seats left at all?
Yeah, so I think we had 1 or 2 seats pop up in the CERT lab. So that's September 30th, October 1st and 2nd, the CERT lab piece being taught by lead Blue Card instructors. And then I think we have maybe 3 seats that popped open from the Mayday management workshop, which is October 1st and 2nd, right on the front end of the conference. So yeah, that'll be that. We're super excited about the pre-conference workshops in 2025. We're going to push out several other pre-conference workshops if people are traveling to Cincinnati. It's going to be in Cincinnati again in 2025 around the same dates. We'll announce that at the conference this year, but we'll have some other pre-conference workshops. So looking forward to that. And then I'm super excited that, at the conference, so a year ago at the conference, we talked a lot about what's on the horizon, what we're doing, where we've been, where we're going. And every day as I look at what we've done, accomplished over this last year, and the stuff that we're going to be rolling out, the Silverback Leadership module, amazing. It's fantastic. There's nothing else like that. So, the intro to Silverback Leadership and customer service from the inside out, and all of those pieces. I'm super excited. That's going to be rolling out actually just before the conference, so that folks get an opportunity to look at it and they can talk to Nick and Terry about what that's all about. Chris Stewart and Grant last year kind of did a little rollout of the TRT, 8 functions of command for TRT response. And just like the hazmat program, it's not for the hazmat technician or the rescue guy. It's for the engine officer riding in the front seat of an engine that doesn't have any, technical experience with that. Basically, just get an incident going, make good decisions, make sure that we do all we can with what we have. But example, that we don't jump in the trench just because we feel emotionally like we have to, or we jump in the river, or we, jump in the ice-covered lake, and the list goes on, right? So that's really that's super exciting. The ARF module, that has come to life. So that's going to be rolling out at the conference. A whole lot of things going on. The after action reporting thing, countless hours over really the last 3 years, I guess, have gone into that. And that's probably the thing that I'm most excited about, the after action reporting system. And the ability for that tool, when used properly, to really help fire departments in self-improvement. So identification of areas that we can do better, and then also identification of areas that we're doing well, so that we reinforce, what we do well, and that we can use that tool to spread the message across our whole organization. Because there's only one shift and one company that experienced what that company experienced, but we can all learn, and we should all learn from what we do well, and what we can do better. Last week we talked about a little bit. I was super excited because college football's back, and as I watch reviews this week of college football, and I hear coaches say, "Yeah, we did pretty well, but I'm disappointed, and we can do so much better, and we're going to focus on that this week." And I mean, when you blow a team out 63-0, and everybody did well, and they played well, obviously, there was still plenty of area for improvement, right? So, and it was brought up. I mean, on national news, the guy said, "Yeah, we did good, but we can do so much better." And I identified a whole bunch of things that we're going to do better. So, organizationally, providing service to the community every day, we should be looking at what can we do better. And so, as I review the after action reporting stuff, and we're starting to roll that out, it really ties right back to the silverback leadership piece, like that customer service from the inside out, and that whole approach of performance management. It matters, right? I mean, we're a profession, and I don't talk about profession whether you get paid to do this job or not. We're a profession to provide a service to the community, for the community, and that's why we exist. So we should always be looking to do better. Yeah, so there's a whole lot of stuff going on, and going to be rolling out, and we've made a whole lot of progress over this last year with the program and the system, and new parts and pieces, and most all of that comes from input and feedback from our end user, the customer, because we listen to what they have to say. I mean, we don't have all the answers. We know we don't have all the answers. Nobody has all the answers. When they think they have all the answers, that's when that's when you start to fail, right? So,
Right.
Yeah, I'm super excited.
One of the things about the ARF, not the ARF module, but the after action review module, coming up on October 17th, we're going to have a webinar where we give an intro on how that module works, talking about some of the tools, how it's used for a continuous improvement tool. So first time we're letting everyone know about it here on the podcast. Write it down, October 17th. You will get, all Blue Card users will get an invitation in their email very shortly to join that webinar on October 17th, where we're talking about that module. And then in the coming weeks, we'll also have a podcast on the ARF module. Chris Stewart and Jeff King will join us for that. And we're rolling that out at the conference this year, but we'll also give folks who can't make it to the conference this year an opportunity to learn more about it, whether you're a municipal airport, you've got aircraft flying overhead, whatever the case. This is really a module that's useful for every fire department that could potentially deal with an aviation emergency. So we'll talk to the creators who were part of that project and get the lowdown on how that module works in the coming weeks as well. So we're very excited about all of that. Of course, if you're at the conference, you're going to hear about all of it. So that's kind of our kickoff for all the new stuff that happens with Blue Card is at our annual conference. And we really look forward to seeing folks there. HazardZoneBC.com. If you want to get registered, there is still time to do that. Hey, last week, we were back on the road after a little Labor Day break. We were in Minot, North Dakota at the Air Force Base there, helping them with the certification lab. If you're a new department and you need some help with the certification lab, you can always contact Josh, and he can get you some information on how the Blue Card lead instructors can help you with that. Then coming up this week, we're busy again, aren't we?
Oh yeah, this week we're back in Phoenix, kicking it off after we're not going to be in Phoenix in July and August. Everyone would melt, but I just seen I guess it was last week I saw it that set the record 100 and something days above 100 degrees. It was first time in a long time. Last record was like 70 something days, whatever. But yeah, so we're back in Phoenix, over full. I think 13 or 14 students in that trainer that's kicking off. And then we have a huge project we're doing in the Northeast with Norfolk County, Massachusetts. So they're putting I don't know, a little over 50 instructors online, and they're putting 1,000 users online. Did a countywide AFG grant and got funded for I think 20 something fire departments. So we're kicking off that project, and then we're going to be there for I think 3 weeks in a row, and then we got the conference, and then we're back there for 2 weeks, and then we just picked up some other agencies around there that are, latching on to the system. So I want to go ahead and throw it out at this point to everybody based off the work we got going on. So we have no room to do anything else really for the rest of 2024. We got the 6 trainers for 2025, the first 6 in Phoenix on the schedule. And then we got a few other classes on there. But the biggest thing is if you're looking for a trainer right after the first of the year, make sure you get in touch with me because our schedule's going to start, filling up pretty quickly. And then the workshops. So we can only do probably 5 big box workshops a year. So that's kind of a first come, first serve basis. So if you want a big box workshop in 2025, reach out to me and I'll get you on the list. And we're going to try to do those regionally. Example, we're probably not going to do one in Michigan and then turn around and do one in Northern Ohio because those are open to 40 students. And the key to that program is having Shane Ray there for, the first day talking about from the National Fire Sprinkler Association perspective of, best practice, real incidents, when things go right and when things go wrong. And then the same thing with the critical thinking class, the Mayday management class, the vision ops, any of the workshop stuff. If you're looking to do something with that in 2025, even if you don't have dates or you're not confirmed yet, or you're waiting on your budget to get approved, just reach out to me and we can kind of talk about it. I can put it on our radar anyway. Because just like this year, many of you wanted classes in this fourth quarter and it was too late. So the sooner we get it booked for you, the better, obviously the better. The sooner you get a hold of us, the better chance we have of being able to get it booked up for you. So yeah, kicking off this week is great. And then when you look at our calendar, I think we have in September 9, I think we're doing 9 events in September. And then the conference, September 30th through the 4th, and then October looks exactly the same. And then I think we got 5 events in November. And when you add the holiday weekend to that, that makes it tight. And then in December, I think we got 6 classes going, train the trainers and workshops. And so when you take December holidays and put it into it, it really we're pushing a lot into a short period of time. But we're super excited about it. We love being on the road. We love networking with fire departments, learning from you all, and continuing to provide a program. As I always do say, we always live in a state of fixing ourselves. So your input matters. And when we're out there on the road, we hear your input, and that's what drives us to continue to develop new curriculum and to refine what we have.
We love getting on the road. Yeah, Josh hears it from me because I get so excited when we meet new departments and we're hanging out and seeing how they operate. As a chief I used to work with would say, when you've seen one fire department, you've seen one fire department. Everybody's just a little different, either with the way they deploy, the way they train, what the culture is, the way their trucks are set up, the way their firefighters dress, everything. So it's always great for us to get out and see everyone and learn more about what fire departments are doing. So contact Josh because he's absolutely right. It is a limited capacity that we have. We have a lot of capacity, but for sake of consistency, we like to send out a cadre of lead instructors that are consistent. So we only have so much capacity to be able to get that consistent message out there. So we can do a lot at once, but that there is a limit to that as well. So to get in early and get your reservations for whatever it is, whether it's a train the trainer, a workshop, or you want us to come to your community to do that, contact Josh. But get that set up sooner than later, because it is getting harder and harder to get the dates that you might want if you don't get it ahead of time. Today, we are going to talk about the 3 deep model, and Chief Bernasini would talk about the tactical reserve that is needed. And this was particularly evident after the Tarver incident. It began to grow. So let's explain to folks, first of all, Josh, what the 3 deep model is, especially, a little primer for either people who are not blue card users or new to blue card. What is 3 deep and why is it important?
It really comes down to a deployment piece and deployment and resource. So I like to say, how deep is your bench? Because you don't always win with, that initial wave of resources. And then you always need to have resource available to address, the unknown or those things that come up at an incident. And an example of that, anybody who listened to the podcast that we did from Clay Fire Territory, the value of having a company right there on deck when they found a victim. So that's that example of how deep is your bench. Well, something changed, or we not changed. We found a victim. So we were doing fire attack, we're doing search. And now I need a company to support that. So that on deck company, which brings it to the 2 deep piece, supports the initial wave of task level. So that on deck company was in place right at the entry point and was able to deploy right away to support that initial task level operation of work that was taking place. So what it really lets us do is keep pace with the critical factors that we're arriving to and evaluating. So, so many times you see a response of, 17 to 21 people. And, everywhere I go and talk to people about it, it's like, well, why did you have 15 people inside of a 1,500 square foot house? They're like, I don't know. Every single time you get in fine, and then you can't get out because they're piled up on you. Air packs are banging together. We're, doing stuff we don't need to do because firemen are going to find something to do. Well, in our system, where it really starts is we deploy resource, the task level, the first level, based off the critical fireground factors to complete objectives. So our objectives are, we're the fire department. We're going to put the fire out, and we're going to do search when applicable, places with beds and places of gathering and so on. And then we are going to do, property conservation. So again, we deploy that task level based off the critical factors that we identify to solve the problem. And how many resources is it going to take to solve that problem? So I'll just keep it simple. You're going to a 1,500 square foot slab, 1-story house. Well, how many companies do you really need to have inside there? You're sending 7, but you don't need 7 inside there. So maybe I need a fire attack team. Maybe I need a backup team. I'm going to assign a company to search, and I got a company on deck. So I'm using 4 of the 7 initially, right? So I have companies in there doing work addressing the critical fireground factors, and then I have a company outside on deck, or maybe 2 companies outside on deck that are ready to go for whatever the next assignment could be. Or the first job of on deck is you are the rapid intervention team. You're right there ready to go. And we use that on deck thing following the Brett Tarver piece, what they found out in Phoenix, that keeps people much more engaged when they know that they're the next one. So, the task level, I think, John, is pretty simple. What I talked about, just to focus on addressing the critical fireground factors. We deploy the initial wave to address critical fireground factors. We don't deploy less, and we don't deploy more. We deploy the resources that we need. And if we don't have the resources to solve the problem in that initial wave, then as very well respected FDNY chief Vinny Dunn has said over and over again, if you don't have the resources to address the problem, then you're in the wrong strategy. So the front end is pretty simple, right? identify the critical fireground factors, what's standing in the way of me solving these critical fireground factors, what resources do I have to work through and solve that problem, and then that puts me to that next wave. So do you want to break that down a little bit more, John? Talk about the task level before we jump to on deck?
Yeah, let's talk about the working crews and how their replacement happens and how we forecast ahead for the needs that we have in that incident.
Yeah, so I guess at the task level, every company has a company officer, and we call it the company officer because they're responsible for their company, and that they can only manage and do the work that they can really realistically do. So, accountability, error management, working through solving the problems, having that, 16-foot circle, if you will, around them, using a thermal imaging camera. Back to the air management piece, we have to be doing air management. That's our tank of gas. Once you're out of air and you're in the IDLH, it's over, right? It's like running out of gas on the side of the road. You have to forecast that. And part of that forecasting does line up to the tactical and strategic level. So when those companies are in there doing work, the company officers managing each of those companies. So in our system, we would not make an interior company officer or somebody on the interior a division in the IDLH. The company officer is responsible for their company, and then they would report to somebody who's a division boss at an entry point. When it comes to the work and recycling, we talk about the communications piece. So why do we put people on deck? So on deck exists for the purpose of they're there, first and foremost, to be the rapid intervention team, right there, ready to go with the appropriate equipment, engaged in the incident, knowing that they're getting the next assignment, listening to the radio, because whether it comes out and they say priority traffic, we need another company to assist with fire control for a fire in the attic, that company that's on deck is going to get that assignment. So they're a little bit more engaged. Or they say, Mayday, 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 we've had a ceiling collapse. We need somebody with some heavier cutters and air transfill bag. They're right there at the entry point at that fire attack location, ready to go. So that's on deck. So, and on deck isn't one company, right? So I think there's some confusion out there with some people on that. So again, how much work is taking place? How far are they into the building? What is the cycle going to look like? Am I at a house where we're working 20 feet through the door, or am I at a 300 by 300 building like we were a few weeks ago at a Goodwill distribution center? And I think I was Delta at the fire attack location, and I think I went through like 12 companies rotating in and out because we were 150 feet inside of a building that had a sprinkler controlled fire and had 3 or 4 tractor trailer loads worth of clothes in there that had to be overhauled, right? So it wasn't like high rack storage. It was bins of clothing that had to be, moved around. The sprinkler system totally controlled it. But when it came to the air management part, it was the company officer's job to make sure that you and your crew get out of that building before your low air alarm starts going off. So if I have 2 companies in there working, then I need at least, really what I need is 4 companies on deck outside, because I need 2 companies to replace the 2 companies that are working. And then I still need to have that on deck in place, because the company that's coming out is going to recycle, and it doesn't happen in 30 seconds. So that's that next level of the 3 deep deployment. So I kind of veered into it a little bit. So we talk a little bit about, in the division ops class, we talk about 2 deep deployment, which is really just a part of the 3 deep deployment, right? So the 2 deep deployment is I'm Delta at an incident running that division, and John, example, you're my support officer. The 2 deep means we're managing those companies that went through that attack location that are on the inside. And then we're also taking care of and making sure that we have the resources available to us to keep pace based on our incident action plan and the critical factors that we need to address in our geographic area. So it's our job to maintain that 2 deep deployment. So if I'm going to recycle companies, that's that 2 deep part of it. As soon as I'm going to rehab somebody, then as a division, I would need to notify command that I likely need more resources, and I need to be specific about that. So I wouldn't key up the radio and say, I need more companies. Delta to command, I need 2 companies, 3, whatever you need specifically, right? So really you're giving out, a can report. So what's going on there now? What progress have you made? And here's my need. And I'm sending engine 5 and engine 7 back to you to go to rehab. So that when we talk about 2 deep deployment, that's what that piece of it is. And we would set up that on deck position anywhere that we have a fire attack location. So ideally, right, we would have, if I have 2 attack positions, then I have on deck in 2 different locations. And on deck, first and foremost, goes back to the rapid intervention team, right? So they're right there, ready to go with the proper equipment, ready to make entry at this very moment. Because not to go down the rabbit hole, but rapid intervention of I'm putting up ground ladders, cutting window bars off, doing a 360, shutting off the gas, doing all those other things. There ain't nothing rapid about that. I'm not saying that those things don't need to happen. That's called support work that I would assign a company that has the capability to do that work to do if that work needs to be done. Because I want my rapid intervention team right there at the entry point, ready to go right now to work through and solve the problem, because they're fully engaged in what's going on at that entry point. I'm not going to use them on the Charlie side. I'm not going to use them anywhere else. I'm going to use them right there. If I have an attack position somewhere else, they would have their own on deck piece there. So this whole thing comes down to what's your depth chart look like? That's the 3 deep deployment thing. I got companies working, I got companies on deck, and then the last piece of it is the companies are still level 1 staged or at a forward staging location that they're ready to be assigned maybe into a geographic area. So they're working for and still on the strategic IC's worksheet. We know that they're there, but they're there to be used when I need that additional resource. There's nothing worse than being a division boss or a strategic IC when you have that feeling of, I sure wish I had companies right now, because I'm losing ground on this because I don't have anybody to assign to do the work.
Right. Well, going back to the on deck companies, because it's a question I get and I'm interested in how you answer this one. When do you know as the IC on the very early stages of an incident when it's time to start on decking companies? At what point do you do that? And it's dynamic. So I want to hear your answer, and I'll maybe share with you what I usually say.
Yeah. So we assign on deck after we've addressed, those critical fireground factors that we've identified, and that we have the companies to do the work to address those initial objectives, right? So our initial 2, primary search and fire control. So I'm addressing those pieces, and then and only then is when I start assigning on deck. So we don't do the second company goes on deck. We don't do the third company ends up on deck. We assign on deck as a tactical reserve. And it's called a tactical reserve because they're there to support the work that is taking place. The initial wave of work that first company got there, and based off of their size up, identified, again, the critical factors. What can I do about these critical factors? What's standing in the way of me solving these critical factors? And what resources do I have to solve the problem? And then and only then do we end up in the position where we're putting companies on deck. Because the number one way to make things better for us is to put the fire out. The number one way to make things better altogether on the fire ground is assign the people to do the work to put the fire out and to find anybody who might be a victim inside of these buildings. So on deck comes it's called the tactical reserve for a reason, because it's only going there once the work is completed by the ones that are being initially assigned at the task level to do the initial wave of work.
We found that once we started prescribing really who was on deck too, that we would keep more companies level 1 stage, on an average 4 to 5 additional companies, which really meant that we were going an alarm level over mostly what we needed on the scene. Now, we would still keep those companies in level 1 as a tactical reserve in case we needed them, but we weren't committing them to the scene. So if a second incident came up, and, talking about contamination, why would you needlessly contaminate crews if you didn't need to? So the other thing I see that happens is a new incident commander a lot of times will load up that division without getting a can report. So they keep just, somebody level 1's engine 5, go on deck alpha, engine 6, go on deck alpha. And they start stacking companies without really getting a can report, which includes the needs. Do you really need those companies there? Do you see that happening a lot with the new ICs like I do?
Yeah. So I think when we're not comfortable with the resources not doing anything, we do that, right? Somebody went level 1, I have to give them something to do. And that's when we start piling it up. And that's when you end up in that position of, okay, well, I blew through all these front end resources, a lot of them doing something that I didn't need to be done. Work didn't need to happen, or there was no work for them to really do. They just got deployed somewhere. And then you don't have a tactical reserve in place. So you, like you said, John, you end up calling second and third alarm assignments when you had plenty of resource really there to work through and solve the problem. If we assigned resource based off of the critical factors and the problem, instead of, well, I got 7 companies coming and they're all going to do something. And we know we don't need that. But I think when you don't have a system in place and you're not comfortable managing the event, that's the position we end up in. And I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying that there's not plenty of instances and cases where you can assign right off the cuff 5, 6, 7, 8 companies, right? I mean, in the blue card world, we can talk about that 3-story apartment building. And I'll put it right out there. That first due company officer, if the battalion didn't show up, could assign 5 companies. So they're going to the first floor, company's going to the second floor, another company's going to the third floor. The fire's into the attic. So I got exposure and exposure. So I got 5 companies assigned task level work inside. And I'm going to have probably 2 companies, at least 2 companies on deck. And we didn't even talk about ladder 4 priority traffic. We found a victim on the 3rd floor. We're coming out and we're going to need another company to assist us in getting them down the steps. Right. So, I mean, but that's that looking at the work that needs to happen and where I'm going to use the resource. That incident, much different than engine 1. I'm on the scene of a medium 2-story residential. I got a working fire, stretching the line to the alpha side, primary search fire control. We got a water supply. We're going to be in the offensive strategy. Go ahead and hold the assignment. I'll be Main Street Command. Command all units, 360s complete. This is a kitchen fire. We're going to be redeploying to the Charlie side, remaining in the offensive strategy. Going to continue to hold the assignment accountabilities at engine 1. Totally different incident than the apartments, right? So when I identify those critical factors, I'm going to get a line or 2 maybe into place. I'm going to make sure I'm getting searches done, and then I'm going to get on deck. So including on deck, I got like 4 companies assigned, because in about 32 seconds, engine 1's either going to say we have fire control in the kitchen, or they're going to say we got a fire into the attic, and then they got a company on deck that they can assign to go to that next piece, or they have another line maybe deployed behind them that they could get to that location where the fire is going to. So, we only assign the resource based off of the critical fireground factors. And, I laugh out loud about it every time somebody says it. And if I ask somebody, why did you assign all those companies? Well, I assign them because I need them to like me. And I'm like, well, what are you doing that you need them to like you? Like, they should like you because you gave them a real assignment. I mean, in my entire career, there's nothing I disliked more than being 4th, 5th, or 6th due and getting assigned to do something when it should have been solved it was solved with 3 companies, right? It's like, get me out of here so I can go to something else. And I don't know. I think there's just a comfort level, thing there with people when they over assign based off the work that needs to happen.
We were talking about that even from a customer service aspect, and more damage being done, and holes getting cut in roofs because and I heard this from a fire chief, my guys have a scratch they need to itch, and I'm just going to let them do that work for practice. And it's like, why? These are real houses that we're talking about, and real fire victims. Let's not make them more of a victim from us loading the property up with people who are just looking for something to do, and the actions really aren't meeting the needs of the incident. So switching gears over to level 1, because people who don't understand it clearly misrepresent it. Bruno used to say, if you don't have a staging system, you don't have a command system. So level 1 is really the entry, the gate to get into the incident, so to speak. Sooner or later, you end up keeping companies level 1. But at the beginning of the incident, that level 1 process, and you've said it before, Josh, it's like the wheels aren't even stopping on the truck. They're getting assignments so quickly when there's critical needs to be had. So explain to the new user or folks who need a refresher, what does level 1 look like at the beginning, the middle, and the end of the incident, or toward the end of the incident?
Yeah. So level 1 at the beginning is, so the first due company officer got there, gave a size up, follow up report, established command. That starts level 1 staging. So within your own system, you could have first engine and truck and battalion chief go directly to the scene, or first engine and rescue and battalion chief, or first engine and medic, or whatever you decide, right? That on your front end for that initial, very initial wave of operation. So medic and engine work together to create one company, whatever that looks like. So once that first due company officer establishes command, level 1 staging goes into place. So what that means is level 1 staging for everyone means don't go past the last street or access to bring you in, maybe a different way. So anybody who's listening to this knows you've been to plenty of, well, I hope you've been to some incidents where it's like, this worked out really nice for me being second due, because I was able to come in another way and get into a better position as an engine or a truck to get proper placement. So level 1, don't put your bumper on the back end of the first due company, period. Right. That's a whole thing. So level 1 staging, don't go past your last means of egress to come in potentially another way. For engines, don't go past a water supply, right? So level 1 staged on a water supply. So there you are. Maybe communicating that, right? So that's a little piece that you could say level 1 staged at 3rd and Main, so that everybody knows, oh, you're there. So a later arriving engine, that might cause them to come a different, direction of travel. And then for trucks and support vehicles, really just level 1 staged is don't go past, for sure, your last means to come in to this incident a different way. In that level 1 staging piece on the front end, literally at a working incident where you want to be there because there's going to be work to do, your wheels probably don't stop turning. And I guess when I say that only happens when your people are using a system where size up +3. So the initial company officer got there, did a size up, did a 360, and then in their mind knew what the next 3 assignments needed to be to work through and solve the problem. Not based off of, well, some piece of paper says this is what we do with them, but this is what I need to do with the companies to solve the problem based off the critical factors that I've identified. So I'm command, and ladder 1 goes level 1. As soon as they go level 1, I'm not even contacting them back, right? Because they're ready for the assignment. Command to ladder 1, I need you to, position right behind engine 1, get a line off of engine 1, go to the 2nd floor, primary search fire control. And they know that that's their assignment, right? I mean, they got communicated that assignment. They know how they're going to come into the incident. They probably have a pretty good idea, if you train together and you have a system, of what it's going to be based off of what the initial radio report was of what the assignment is likely going to be. So again, that initial wave, that first due company officer assigns that first 3, 4, sometimes 5 companies to do work. And 5 is getting to the end of their capacity for sure to be able to assign people to do work. But we've used plenty of audio where a battalion is delayed, and that first arriving IC did a fantastic job and assigned 5 companies at a working incident with a victim and maintain being the company officer inside the building with their initial crew, and still gave those assignments. So I think that's the power in the system of we have a standard, we train on that standard, and then we refine based off of things that worked and things that didn't work. So that's the front end piece. I mean, your wheels don't stop turning, and I hear it all the time. Level 1 staging, they're gonna stage till that thing burns down, and it's like, well, we listen to audio from plenty of fire departments that go to a lot of fires of the wheels never stop turning, right? I mean, as soon as they go level 1, that assignment is coming out if there is something for them to do. And if there's not something for them to do, it ends up being like an investigation thing. Command ladder 4, I'm clear, you're level 1. Just acknowledge it so that they know, okay, I know that they're sitting there, right? Whether you're the company officer of the company who's in command, or, really that applies to the strategic IC for sure. Like, just go ahead and acknowledge that they're level 1, because otherwise they shouldn't, but otherwise they're probably going to call you in 5 minutes, and not 5 minutes, probably 5 seconds. Hey, we're right here. We're level 1. So that's like the initial, phase piece of it. And then into the middle of it, as far as level 1 goes, I'm going to say that the middle is more that the battalion has already gotten there. So the battalion's there. Well, you're on the first alarm assignment. You're hearing the communications on the fire ground. You heard the initial radio report. You heard size up. You heard the action that was going to be taken. You heard the assignments of the first, 3, maybe 4 companies. And now you're going to hear that command transfer. So during the command transfer, you're going to hear a CAN report from that company on the inside. You're going to hear a rundown of the work. So really, you're coming into this, you're level 1, or you're getting ready to go level 1. Don't butt in on the radio and say, I'm level 1 when this command transfer piece is happening. Now, if shit's going sideways and it's clear that they need resource, then maybe go level 1, or in some cases, just make yourself seen, right? So most incident commanders, though, that use a system, if they need somebody, they're just going to say, do I have any companies level 1 staged? Or who's the next company level 1 staged, if that was a thing, right? So a need. So battalion got there, and they called command for a transfer, gave them a, this is what I think's happening. This is what it looks like. This is where I believe position and function of units are. Go ahead and give me a CAN report. And the CAN report comes out. We got the fire knocked down. We're checking for extension. Primary search of the first floor is complete. We need a company to get to the second floor. Well, it's probably going to go to an on-deck company, but that means that a level 1 company is probably going to get moved up maybe to be on deck, right? So when everybody's working within the system and you're using all the same terminology, and you understand that we deploy in our organization or in our region to address critical fireground factors, it helps everybody fit into the system, right? It helps to eliminate that I am here and everybody needs to know I'm here because they need to use me to do something. And it's like, no, you're just special. You're in a special way, right? So that's kind of like that middle ground piece. You're probably going to get assigned, but you're going to get assigned based off of what the need is coming from that CAN report. Because at that point, if there's somebody on deck, you might just sit there for a minute until they figure out exactly what the specific need is, because they have somebody forward in that on deck position that they could use if there's an immediate need. And then in that later wave of level 1 is, you've heard all of this, for 8, 6, 7, 8, 10 minutes, in the response. And whether they need resource or they don't need resource right now, right? So yeah, I'm here and I'm level 1. So some of the things that are going on at that point in time is there's 3 or 4 companies working. I do not need to butt in on any radio traffic and let anybody know that I'm here until there's totally open airwaves, right? So, truck 7, we're level 1. Copy, truck 7, just stay level 1. Something that's going on in a whole lot of systems with CAD and so on is like all this geofencing and all that, right? So a battalion with an aide sitting in a car, as soon as that vehicle, however you set it up, as soon as that vehicle gets within 500 to 1,000 feet and crosses that geofence, it would just populate on your CAD that they are there, right? So I can even see in my rundown on my CAD that here's all the units that are here and the order of arrival of how they got here. So I know that you're here and it's fine. So you don't necessarily need to butt in and say that you're level 1. When there's time and the waves are free, then yes, say level 1. So since we've gone that far, John, I think we should talk about the second alarm and level 2 staging just a little bit. I mean, it really is, it's an extension of the 3 deep deployment.
So when we do a level 2 staging area, I think one of the important factors is keeping it away from the incident itself. It's an area away from the incident. So tell us why it's important for that IC to prompt where that staging area is and how resources are going to be requested from the level 2 staging area once it's established.
Yeah. So if you're going to call for a second alarm and you don't want them on your TAC channel because you need them right now. So I'll give you an example. You go to that apartment building we were talking about earlier, and I got 7 fire companies total on my first alarm assignment. Well, I might call for a second alarm, and I'm not going to probably tell them to stage somewhere else because I want them coming there. I have work for them right now, right? Versus I'm at the building that's 300 by 300. It's sprinkler controlled. I know I'm going to need them. I just don't need them at this very moment. So and I call for a second alarm. So what I don't want is that second alarm assignment getting on the radio and talking when I got companies in the IDLH when I'm not going to use those companies right now because I have my 3 deep fulfilled. I'm calling the second alarm so that I can maintain that 3 deep when I start sending companies to rehab and so on, or I create other attack positions if this thing ends up going defensive and I have to protect exposures or get into other buildings or something like that. So whether you're the first arriving company officer calling for a second alarm, the strategic IC calling for a second alarm, or you build out a command band and operation and you're talking about second and third alarm, no matter what, if I'm not going to use the resource right now, I need to tell the county, tell dispatch to tell them, here's the staging location, and I want them on a separate frequency because I do not want them interfering with the IDLH traffic and communications. So there's 2 sides to that calling for additional resource, right? So I got there, it's an apartment building. There's a lot of work to do, and I want them on the TAC channel because I have work for them to do right now. Or I'm forecasting and there's going to be work for them to do, and I'm going to put them on a separate frequency at a separate location and assign a staging officer to them that I will communicate with on a separate frequency, not the IDLH channel, when I need that resource to move forward. So that second alarm, third alarm, lets us have the companies to keep pace with an escalating event or an operation that's extended with a level 2 staging.
How often would you bring in that logistics officer to start communicating with the level 2 staging area? Is there a threshold on the amount of companies, amount of resources that you have on the scene that you would like to see that happen at? Or is it just a dynamic thing that happens naturally? How do we get that logistics person in place to start tracking that?
Yeah, so the person that's getting assigned out there to that geographic location of the level 2 or staging location, it becomes a priority to get them there. But it's not a priority as far as it doesn't override anything that happens on the fire ground. So if the strategic IC doesn't have a support officer, we're not going to get somebody's level 2 staging officer, right? If if Alpha doesn't have a support officer with them, we're not getting. So until we've reinforced all of the strategic and tactical positions on the fire ground with support, I would not fill that logistics, position. But the downfall of that is somebody has to do it, right? So whether it's the first company officer there becomes that person, well, when you assign that company, then what happens? Or, well, that company officer is the level 2 staging officer, so I'm going to use everybody else first before I use them. So you need to have a system and a plan of how you're going to do that. One thing I talk about a lot at classes all over the place is most of the country has the ability to get plenty of people there to fill out command function roles. It's a matter of we're not willing to call them, or we don't call them, or we can't call them over here because what if there's another incident? Well, you better handle the first one before you think you're going to handle the second one, right? You can't spread it so thin that you got 99-cent toilet paper that anything's going to go through. So, in our region here in Ohio and Hamilton County, Cincinnati, it is not uncommon for us to get 5 to 7 chief officers, qualified, trained chief officers, district chiefs, whatever it is, day or night on an incident. And like every company, they're no different. They level 1 staged. If you need them, you use them. And if you don't need them, you don't use them. So by the time you're getting to that level 2 staging thing, you probably in your geographic area have more than enough resources to get them there if you need them. So, you can drive all the way across our entire county on the 275 loop in 45 minutes. Well, if I'm at the far west Indiana border at a Home Depot on fire, and I have to get a battalion chief from Anderson Township that is as far east in Hamilton County as you can go, and they're the 5th or 6th chief getting there in 45 minutes, then so be it. But they're coming there to fill out other roles, right? So it's going to be those other support roles that they end up filling. So again, there's plenty of resource there. And I'm going to go back to an article that was written a long time ago. You shouldn't send the resource there to do the work if you don't send the people there to manage it. Period. Right? Every time I turn on sports, I watch sports on TV, and that's about all I can endure with the TV. Mm-hmm. But so I see it a lot. But as I was sitting in the stands last Saturday at the football game, I started counting, and I think I counted like 27 coaches or support staff on the field at a college football game. They're all there because they're supporting the whole operation to win the game, right? A game. And in our system, we should send the resource to manage it, right? And, John, sometimes on here we talk about, or use them as an example, I guess, not talk about, but use them as an example, FDNY. The FDNY sends more command and support staff to an incident than 99.9% of the American Fire Service sends to a building on fire, counting everybody. And there's a reason why they do it, right? To manage the event. Battalion chiefs, division bosses, the area-wide commander. Then you end up with, field comm and all these other people there that are all supporting command so that we can do the work. And, if that's missing, most of the time it comes down to accidental success when we make it work, right? Because what does it look like when things don't go as you wrote down on your piece of paper of how you think they should go? The time to wish you had somebody there to help you is not when you need them to help you. We build out a system for a reason. And as Nick always says, right? The pilot didn't show up today, but we have somebody on the ground crew who wanted to be a pilot, and we're just going to go ahead and let them fly the plane today. Ain't going to happen.
All right.
I wouldn't mind hitting on a question that we've gotten several times, and I don't think we've ever addressed this one, but it crossed my mind because of what we were just talking about, and I'm hearing from organizations, well, the district chief was off and the ride up was off, so we just had the lieutenant ride in the car today because we weren't going to pay overtime. And I mean, it seems to be a common thing I'm hearing a lot is we're not going to pay the overtime. We're not going to pay the overtime. And I wanted to talk about that briefly, right? So if your organization is an EMS based, fire based EMS, and you provide paramedic service, you're paying overtime to have paramedics on that ambulance if you don't have somebody to put on there, because that's what you're going to do. And not every fire department, I guess, but most fire departments, if you are a driver there, you're probably going to jump through some hoops to become a driver, right? Like, oh, we're paying overtime to drive. Ladder 25's out of service. We got to pay overtime to drive. Whatever it is, got to have a driver. But it seems like when we get to that right front seat, and I'm hearing it more and more, the district chief or battalion chief's off, that we're just throwing somebody in that spot, and we're really standing on a slippery slope when we do that, right? Yeah, I'm calling it a district car, but I got a firefighter paramedic riding in there today because really what they do is just, they chase our runs in our town. Well, then call it a chase car or something, right? Or just take it totally out of service. If you don't have a qualified person to fill the position, either pay the overtime or take it out of service. And I get it that the overtime is not always sustainable, but we don't necessarily get to make the decision on what the city is going to pay for and fund and make available, right? So I think that comes down to that what is the expectation of the community, and what are we going to do when we don't have somebody to fill this position? And my view is if I don't have a company officer to fill the role, then you're out of service. I mean, it's important enough for us to have them all the time. We promoted you for a reason, but then we just throw anybody in the spot and let them do it. And we're crazy as hell if we shouldn't expect different results, right? So, I mean, I'm hearing that more and more, and as we travel around, I'm hearing that a bit. Like, yeah, the admin chief is chasing the battalion today because they got somebody in that car who's never ridden in the car before, and it's like, what? Like, what are we doing? And we're so selective with some of the positions, right? The paramedic unit, well, you have to ride with a paramedic for 6 months before you can be the lead paramedic, all these things. And we will pay somebody to fill the paramedic spot. No ands, if, buts about it. And it seems like the driver thing, I mean, huge liability with driving a fire truck. I get it. Like, but we train them. We make them go through the course. They got to do their annual stuff, all of that. But we almost give a disservice to the importance of the company officer and those chief positions, that if somebody's not there, we'll just fill it with somebody. And it's like, you're riding a slippery slope. Accidental success only lasts so long, and it should not be confused with success. So,
all right, Josh, it's time for a timeless tactical truth. And today's timeless tactical truth from Alan Brunacini: simple wins. Simple wins. Chief always used to talk about overcomplicating an uncomplicated process, which we tend to do both in the bureaucracy that typically runs our fire departments and human beings in general. Do you have an example on something that is really simple that we overcomplicate sometimes when it either comes to command, staging, some of the stuff we've been talking about today with 3 Deep?
I got one before we talk about that simple wins, and water always wins. So don't delay water under any circumstance. put water on the fire, period. That water for the win every time, all the time, right? And there's plenty of people out there going to listen to this and say, oh, well, but if you have this, you shouldn't put water on it. If you have that, well, that comes back to the critical thinking thing. But I'm talking about the house is on fire, and it looks like sometimes we do 5 different things before we put water on it. It's like, why are we not putting water on this? Why are we not putting water on this to solve this problem? If I would have just put water on this right here, right now, I would have kept this to 2 rooms. 20 minutes later, we're on a second alarm because we got 3 houses on fire. And it's like, what in the hell happened on the front end of this? So that's a simple wins thing, right? So then the other, simple wins piece is something that we talked about a lot in here. The whole staging piece and deploying companies based off of the critical factors and addressing our end objectives. So only deploy resource to the hazard zone to address the critical factors that we identified and to check off the objectives. And that will keep it much simpler, right? So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 companies working to address the problem that we identified, and then still having that tactical reserve in place. So the other thing with simple wins is having a system that everybody understands and is trained on, and that you've laid out the expectations on, also keeps it simple, right? So the job aid and tool part of it. So I have a process of how I size up things. I have a process of how I develop an incident action plan. Oh, that's called the strategic decision-making model. So I use a strategic decision-making model, right, to keep it simple on identifying critical fireground factors, deploying companies to address those problems, and right on down the line. So a couple different examples there. Simple wins.
For blue card to work, it is simple. People even overcomplicate blue card a lot of times. They try to throw their own little take on it, locally. And what we say is stick with the system, use the parts of the system. It's pretty simple when you do it all together. But when you start to deviate, that's really when it doesn't work very well, because you're overcomplicating something that really isn't very complicated to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Josh.
I got one more simple one, John. I got one more simple one. So, we get I don't know, we've sent our paper IC strategic IC worksheet out to 30,000 people at least by now, right? I mean, this last version, we just updated a little bit just to keep it some reminders on there that the customer asked for and so on. And we did that updated tutorial video on it. So I think that's another great example of keeping it simple. And I love the sports analogy part of things, because the people who are in the IDLH or managing the IDLH, I'll compare that to the people who are standing on the side of the football field managing the shit that's happening on the football field, are on the pen and paper. Now, the analogy part of it, and some people in the background with technology are using technology, right? I mean, technology is amazing, of like everything that they're doing, like showing replays and, the quarterback went here and the receiver went there and all of that. But how it's actually getting managed minute by minute is very simple, right? They're writing down on some sort of dry erase thing or something right there, right now, in the moment of what's going on, and tracking it back. So I think that's another one of those simple things of don't overcomplicate with whatever kind of system, right? I got 175 Velcro tags on a board that I move around as the standalone Lone Ranger strategic IC to try to track this event. And it's like, no, just 11 by 17 piece of paper, you can run out a 3-alarm fire that lasted 3.5 hours and track position and function of every company and every move that they made, from assignments to rehab, and keep it simple for the jobs, roles, and responsibilities of the strategic IC. So just another little side example of it. And if you're looking for that strategic IC worksheet, just reach out to us, or you can find it on the website and along with the tutorial videos on how to use it.
All right, Josh, thank you so much for being here today with us on Bee Shifter, and great topic, 3 deep. If you have any questions for us, because this came from one of the listeners, feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to get your questions, comments, things that you would like to hear on this podcast. We want to deliver to you. So please interact with us and let us know. If you use the fan mail that is on our podcast, be advised that's one way. So we'll answer your fan mail on the podcast, but we cannot get back to you. So if you want us to get back to you directly, please just contact us with our emails, either here on the screen or in the show notes, so we can give you an answer directly without waiting for a podcast to come out.
Very good, John. Well, you better get to class. They're kicking it off over there. You're running late.
Yeah. Well, I'm getting to class. You have a good one, and we'll talk to you next time on the Bee Shifter podcast.
All right, John. We'll see you. Thanks.